NPR.
You probably heard about the scary climate report that came from the UN recently. If you didn't, bottom line, we are at the point of no return. We have already done irreversible damage to the environment. But if we want to stop things from getting even worse, we have to make a lot of changes, and we have to make those changes quickly. And one of the things scientists say we need to do is eat way less meat, especially beef. It can cause all these enormous problems for the environment: methane, deforestation.
But the amount of beef Americans have been eating has held pretty much steady for the past 2 decades, around 50 to 60 pounds per year. And look, I know there are likely vegetarians out there saying, look, there's a pretty simple solution here, just stop eating meat. But not everyone is ready to give up their burgers.
Now, there is another solution here: fake meat. You know all about that, Darian. You're a vegetarian.
That's right.
So, for thousands of years, people have been eating foods like tofu. But just in the past few years, all these new plant-based, fancy alternative meat products have been getting really popular, like the Impossible Burger and Beyond Beef. And if you haven't heard of them, they look and they taste almost exactly like real ground beef. The Impossible Burger even bleeds. It is juicy.
Which is pretty amazing or pretty disgusting, depending on your viewpoint. But when it comes to plant-based meat, there's something strange afoot. Say you're shopping for an Hermes bag or a pair of Chanel shoes. Most of the time, the real thing is a lot more expensive than a fake. But plant-based meat is one of the rare cases where the fake is more expensive than the real thing. I'm Darian Woods. This is The Indicator from Planet Money.
And I'm Sally Herships, in for Stacey Vanek Smith. Today on the show, we look at how the sausage is made, the fake sausage, to figure out why it's more expensive than the real thing. And to do that, we are going to talk to a meat lover.
I've always been a meat lover, as everyone born in Brazil.
Brazilians are famous for loving meat. But this Brazilian, he did something kind of radical. He switched sides.
Hey Greg, newsletter feedback. Have been loving your newsletter as of late.
Oh, yay.
Oh, they want you to switch to a serif font.
Oh, they want to switch to serif font?
Yeah. Where can people subscribe?
People can subscribe at npr.org/planetmoneynewsletter. npr.org/planetmoneynewsletter.
At my local Target here in Brooklyn, 2 Impossible Burger patties are about $11 a pound. That is about twice as much as real beef. Now, Darian, I know this is supposed to be a story about beef prices, but to understand why fake beef is so much more expensive, we are going to start with a chicken in Singapore.
I love it.
I promise this is going to make sense. Meet Andrew Menezes. One day, he was in Singapore shopping at his grocery store for chicken.
That day specifically, there was this freezer holding huge blocks of ice.
At the time, Andre worked for one of the largest poultry exporters in the world. It worked on this massive scale. It exported to over 100 countries. It slaughtered more than 8 million chickens a day. So it wasn't that unusual that Andre had chicken on his mind. And he did a little price comparison. The chicken versus the ice.
A similar weight block of ice was the same price as my chicken. This is when I realized there was something wrong.
Andre knew that the chicken staring up at him from the freezer had been shipped to Singapore all the way from Brazil. And he thought, how could a bag of ice be the same price as this chicken?
And then I started digging into it. I said, how is this even possible? Is it that the water is so expensive? But it's not, right? I mean, everyone who bought a block of ice knows this. I'm not talking about tens of dollars, actually, right?
You should know that Andre is an engineer, so he is really interested in efficiency. And he says he had an epiphany right there in the grocery store. His chicken needed water. It needed a chicken house, food, medicine to keep it healthy. Raising chickens or any kind of livestock for meat can be really, really inefficient.
So all of the things you're giving throughout their life, they are not going to be translated into food.
When you grow a chicken or a cow or a pig for food, there's all this other stuff that consumers don't want to buy for meat. We don't want to eat feathers or bones or beaks. So last year, Andre left and he co-founded his own company, Tyndall, one that takes chicken out of the equation. Instead of feeding corn and soybeans to chickens and then selling those chickens to people, he figured he'd just skip the chicken step.
Andre has seen inside the proverbial sausage factories of both fake and real meat. And he says there are a few main reasons that fake meat can be so much more expensive than the real thing. One of them is marketing. Imagine you're an ad company filming a commercial for a sizzling steak. Not so tough.
No one needs to convince anyone to eat meat and that meat is good because, we were born and raised, our parents were telling us the meat is good all the way.
But plant-based meat is this whole new category, and it can be really hard to get consumers to try something new. And on top of that, veggie burgers had a bad reputation for years, like kind of crunchy and brown, like old socks, which explains another big expense for new plant-based companies. Research and development, like making protein from peas taste and look and smell like a burger.
Andre says the way his company makes chicken from plants is kind of like making pasta, but a little bit more complex. You take some protein, isolate powder, you add water, you push it through a system that magically combines it, and you get something that ultimately tastes and looks a lot like real meat. And a lot of companies have recently started cracking this code, turning plant matter into something that even a suspicious 9-year-old would not know was not the real thing.
So you mentioned impossible a few times. It bleeds, right? It bleeds. It tastes like meat. It tastes like beef. It smells like beef. It cooks like beef.
Bloomberg says the market for plant-based meat is now exploding, and it could grow as large as $75 billion over the next decade. And if you're thinking maybe lack of competition is keeping prices high, no. There's a lengthy shopping list of huge corporations, Nestle, Tyson, Purdue, Smithfield, Hormel, all getting into the fake game. Even Jeff Bezos is an investor. Andre says, sure, research and development comes with a big cost, but it's paying off. He says the big reason for the price difference is economies of scale.
So plant-based meats today, in general, if you take in the U.S. retail, they only represent about 1.5% of the overall meat market. And that's a huge disadvantage in terms of scale when compared to the meat industry.
Just a handful of companies like Tyson and Cargill in the U.S. produce most of the meat we eat. They are meat giants, and that means they are able to operate with economies of scale, like the poultry company where Andre used to work that slaughtered those 8 million chickens a day.
So they can dilute all of their cost structure into 8 million birds a day, and that becomes a fraction of a cent. Whereas for plant-based, being such a small market for now, the R&D cost and the production cost is still not diluted as it is for the meat.
Companies are scaling up. Andre says he expects the price of plant-based meat to continue to drop. And he says as climate change makes water more scarce and we need more sources of food, he says it's going to drive the price of meat even higher. So a burger or a chicken nugget with the chicken or the cow taken out of the equation will just become that much cheaper relatively.
Okay, so we know why this fake meat is more expensive than the real thing. But here's the big question. Is the process of making this fake meat really better for the environment? And is it really healthier for us?
Oh my God, Darren, I was honestly hoping you were not going to ask that.
I'm sorry.
It's a really tough question to answer. Company information is proprietary. I checked with all kinds of environmental experts, and there just hasn't been a ton of peer-reviewed studies done yet. So it seems like research is leaning towards this is going to be a win for health and the environment. But I know a question we can answer right now, which is, how does it taste compared to the real thing? Because I just happen to have a big warm bowl of Impossible Bolognese sauce right here. And I hear you have something too.
That's right. I went to my local Burger King. One Whopper burger.
One Whopper?
But with the Impossible patty. This is a Whopper with an Impossible patty.
Okay, on the count of 3.
All right.
1, 2, 3. Chew. It tastes just like the real thing.
Tastes like the real thing to me too.
Holy cow.
Yeah. This episode of The Indicator was produced by Jamila Huxtable with help from Marcia Caldwell. It was fact-checked by Michael Huh. The show is edited by Kate Kincannon, and The Indicator is a production of NPR.
NPR's Planet Money Summer School is back. This season is all about investing. We've got stories of big bets, bubble spotting, and cute animals, too. Every Wednesday till Labor Day from NPR's Planet Money.